This is a video presentation to examine whether Bitcoin is the most valuable commodity on Earth. Everybody is aware of how centralized systems work. When you upload your data onto a corporate server, you're surrendering all the digital information within it. And the owners of those corporate servers are entitled to do anything they like with the data that is surrendered to them, either passing it on to aggressive advertisers or possibly nefarious entities, which allows them to profit from all of your hard work and creative content. So what we really need is an alternative network to upload our information to. A network that doesn't have any central point of authority or control, so that we own and control the data that we upload. So what would a network like that look like? Well, first of all, it would have to be a distributed network, so it wasn't centralized. And each distributed component must be economically competitive, because it's economic competition that separates them. Economic competition in a digital network comes in the form of a consensus mechanism called proof of work, otherwise known as mining. And proof of work in Bitcoin is carried out through a secure hash algorithm known as SHA-256. Miners compete with one another to find this cryptographic number, and the miner who finds it wins that particular competition. Before there were any users on the network, and when there was no data being uploaded, all that existed were mining operations that were competing with one another to find SHA-256. And the reason to compete to find SHA-256 was to win the Bitcoin block reward that initially started out at 50 Bitcoins per block. And the way the probability was programmed into Bitcoin meant that a block was found on average every 10 minutes. The block reward of the number of Bitcoin gets cut in half every 210,000 blocks, which is approximately every 4 years. So the first halving took place at block number 210,000, when it was reduced from 50 Bitcoins to 25 Bitcoins. And at block 420,000, it was reduced from 25 Bitcoins to 12.5 Bitcoins. And since the block height number is above 630,000, the current Bitcoin block reward is 6.25 Bitcoins per block, with the next block reward happening at block height 840,000, which is anticipated to be around the middle of April 2024. And this continues until the fixed supply of Bitcoin has been completely extracted from the program, with the final bit of Bitcoin anticipated to be extracted from the system in the year 2140. So what happens when the block reward continues to get cut in half? Well, at some point, someone might be willing to take a risk and exchange these Bitcoins for either a good or a service, due to the blockchain technology that Bitcoin is created from. And this is precisely what happened on the 22nd of May 2010, when Laszlo Hanyek purchased 2 Papa John's pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin. What happened was, an early Bitcoin miner became a network user and sent a transaction of 10,000 Bitcoin that had already been extracted from the system up onto the network and transferred its ownership. This transaction was processed by the Bitcoin miners, who were competing for the Bitcoin block reward in each block, and at the same time won a small transaction fee for processing this transfer of Bitcoin. This historical transaction can still be seen on the network today at block height 57043 for the amount of 10,000 Bitcoin. What happened was, a network user paid for that transaction to be processed in Bitcoin that the miners then competed for, and the winning miner would receive the block reward and the block fee for the transaction. Now currently, the largest players in the tech industry host their services on their own private servers, which are susceptible to cybersecurity hacks and virus software, meaning that their data is not secure, and they spend millions if not billions on trying to secure their data, because if they were to lose any of their customers' data, their customers would then lose confidence in their services and wouldn't use them. However, because their services are hosted on private servers, it means that the content creators then surrender their own content to them, and those companies then own and control that data. And because they offer those services for free, the only way they can make money is by selling that information to aggressive advertisers, or potentially nefarious entities that desire the information that's being surrendered to them. This means that it would be possible for a very powerful technology Gestapo to be established and control everybody's digital information. What will happen in the future is that all of these tech industry services will eventually be hosted on the Bitcoin network, because these tech giants will now no longer have to worry about their customers' data being cracked, hacked, altered, changed or deleted, and they can actually make money from their services rather than selling their customers digital information. What will happen is that the customers who use their service will actually have their information stored on the Bitcoin network, which means they then own and control it, which means they can distribute it and sell it to whoever they please, as they should be able to because they're the ones who created it. They are the content creators. What happens is that every upload of digital information carries with it a small fee, and when all those fees are added up together in a block, they make the block fee. And it's this block fee that will eventually surpass the block reward. As the block reward continues to get cut in half, the block fee continues to increase with the increased volume of usage, as people have a preference to own and control their own data. This means that the companies who generate the largest volumes of transactions will eventually become Bitcoin miners themselves, so that then they can take advantage of winning the fee in Bitcoin associated with all of the transactions from their own users. And the reason people will use the network is because digital data is simply too precious to lose. And for a small fee, people can upload their precious wedding videos and family photos, where they can be stored indefinitely forever on the Bitcoin network using blockchain technology, where they can never be cracked, hacked, altered, changed, or deleted, and owned privately by those who uploaded them. So this is what the economic distribution model of Bitcoin looks like. We can see from the left hand side of the screen that the block reward started out at 50 bitcoins per block. After 210,000 blocks had been extracted, the block reward was then cut to 25 bitcoins per block, and then 12.5, and currently 6.25, with the next halving happening at block height 840,000, when the block reward will be reduced to 3.12 bitcoins per block. So as the block reward continues to get cut in half, the block fee generated by the volume of users continues to increase, and when that surpasses the block reward, it means we'll have an economically self-sustaining system, with the miners competing to process the volume of transactions and winning the block fee associated with each of them. So let's talk about the potential that this network has. All the corporations you currently see listed here use their own private servers to secure their customers' data, which costs them millions if not billions of dollars every year in data security and data efficiencies. And now for the cost of a micropayment, all of those millions if not billions of dollars in costs in securing their data can now be ported over onto the Bitcoin network for the cost of a micropayment, where the data can never be cracked, hacked, altered, changed, or deleted, which means the company CEOs can sleep at night knowing that their customers' data is safe and secure. And in order to use the network, all they need is Bitcoin. So these companies will be buying Bitcoin in order to use the network to save themselves millions if not billions of dollars on data efficiencies and data securities. And not only that, it's an asset that's fixed in supply, that's increasing in value as more and more businesses start to use it, and the demand for the network starts to grow. This means that the companies can start to cut back on the exorbitant cost of their enormous data centers, and small to medium-sized enterprises can get rid of their monthly costs that they pay to either Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Cloud for digital hosting services. Everything can be moved onto the Bitcoin network for the cost of a micropayment, where the data is stored indefinitely and cannot be cracked, hacked, altered, changed, or deleted, meaning their data is safe. So what are the elements required to make up a safe and secure network? Well, the first one is economic competition. There is no middle ground here. A network is either centrally controlled or economically competitive. There is no other option. Secondly, the network must be structured in a way where there is common accountability, where the users are accountable to one another rather than a central entity. Thirdly, the protocol must be locked so that no one can change it and therefore no one controls it. Fourth, the network must have unbounded capacity so that limitations and restrictions could not be manufactured and therefore the network not be manipulated. And finally, the asset that the various operations compete for must be fixed in supply so that it can't be changed and therefore no one controls it. Let's examine these in slightly more detail. First, economic competition. Digital economic competition is called proof of work, and it was invented by Moni, Naor and Cynthia DeWerck in 1993. And this is where computing power is put towards finding a cryptographic number known as SHA-256. A cryptographic number means that it's non-numeric and therefore cannot be reverse calculated, and that's because it starts with a line of zeros as illustrated here. Because it's non-numeric, there is no way to get it apart from having as many different random combination guesses as possible. So it's like winning the lottery, except computing power represents the number of tickets purchased. The more tickets or computing power you have, the more chance you have of winning. This computing power is called hash rate and represents the number of times SHA-256 can be guessed at. Number 2, common accountability. This is created through a chain chain of digital signatures, so that users of the network are accountable to one another rather than a centralized third party. As it states in section 2 of the white paper under the heading of transactions, we define an electronic coin as a chain of digital signatures. Each owner transfers the coin to the next by digitally signing a hash of the previous transaction and the public key of the next owner, and adding these to the end of the coin. A payee can verify the signatures to verify the chain of ownership. This means that making a transaction in Bitcoin is like making a transfer for a contract of value. And in the same way that a contract requires the signatures of the two parties involved, a Bitcoin transaction also requires a digital signature to be carried with it for the purpose of legal recourse. And in Bitcoin, the chain of signatures leads back to the Genesis block that was created by Satoshi Nakamoto, which is why we know he always planned to reveal himself at some stage in the future. This is why when SegWit was implemented on the BTC chain on the 24th of August 2017 that segregated all the digital signatures from the transaction data, made the network economically worthless and essentially controlled unregistered security offering. Which is why this picture is so appropriate, because it was clearly done by a group of very resourceful people who knew what they were doing. As the picture here captions, we crippled it and then we told them it was a store of value. The politics of the Bitcoin protocol looks a bit like this. Bitcoin first started out with a ticker symbol BTC until SegWit fundamentally changed it. The ticker symbol then changed to BCH again until the protocol was altered, and so the Bitcoin protocol now has a ticker symbol with the three letters BSV. BSV is the only Bitcoin protocol that remains untampered that leads right back to the Genesis block. Number 3, a locked protocol. The protocol is the rule set. It is the digital foundation that the network is built on. If it is locked, it means that no one can change it and no one controls it, and therefore anyone can build on it. A locked protocol is a permissionless protocol. And as Michael Saylor said, I would never buy a penny of a crypto token because they are unregistered securities, which means they are being manipulated in an unethical fashion by a central party. Some people generally don't understand the ethics. It doesn't occur to them that if they change the monetary policy of the token, you have manipulated the value of the token, thereby defrauding investors. He's going to be very upset when he finds out the implications of SegWit. Number 4. Unbounded scale capacity. This is achieved in Bitcoin with an uncapped block size. This means that limitations and restrictions cannot be manufactured, and therefore the network cannot be manipulated. And number 5, a fixed asset supply. If the supply of the commodity is fixed, it means that no one can change it and therefore no one controls it. It must be divisible amongst everybody in the economy. And Bitcoin's fixed supply was programmed at 21 million Bitcoin. So now let's examine the rest of the market. The majority of the market consists of tokens, and these are mainly ERC20 tokens built on Ethereum. Tokens are made on top of coins. They are centrally created and are not economically competitive. They are therefore economically worthless unregistered security offerings. Next, we have pre-mined tokens. Pre-mined tokens are centrally created. They are therefore centrally controlled, they're not economically competitive, and they're not distributed. They are therefore economically worthless unregistered security offerings yet again. Next, we have proof of stake. Proof of stake is also centrally created. It is centrally controlled, however, it is distributed but not economically competitive, meaning again they are economically worthless unregistered security offerings. Other alternative protocols are Hedera Hashgraph and the IOTA Tangle. Both are centrally created and controlled, and neither are economically competitive, making them again economically worthless unregistered securities. ERC20 tokens make up approximately 99% of the entire market. Pre-mined are coins such as Tron, Stellar and XRP. Proof of stake make up the majority of the most popular tokens such as Ethereum, Avalanche, Theta Network, Polkadot, Internet Computer and Filecoin, amongst many others. This means that besides Bitcoin, the entire market is economically worthless, which leads to the suspicion that it might well have been created by fat cat bankers trying to protect their own interests in the central banking system to keep people's attention away from Bitcoin. Gary Gensler was correct in his observation when he said, all crypto tokens except for Bitcoin are securities. It's going to come as a shock to many when they find out that Bitcoin is BSV. BSV already has more transactions on it than any other network, and more applications are being built on it every day. And it's already the fastest growing network on the entire market. What will happen is that eventually the entire world will run on the Bitcoin network because digital data is simply too precious to lose. And the most valuable commodity is by far the most useful commodity, which leads us to conclude that Bitcoin might well be the most valuable commodity on Earth.